Hi, I'm Elon Musk. I'm the co-founder of Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal, and Zip2. I certainly didn't expect for any of these things to happen. Honestly, yeah. I just I knew I wanted to be involved in technology, and in fact, the only reason I started a company back in '95, an internet company, was because I couldn't get it. There were only a few internet companies, and I couldn't get a job at any of them. I tried to get a job at Netscape and sent my resume in and tried hanging out in the lobby, but I was too shy to talk to anyone. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll have to start a company because I can't get a job anywhere.
You know, there are American heroes who don't like this idea. Neil Armstrong, Gene Cernan have both testified against commercial spaceflight and the way that you're developing it, and I wonder what you think of that.
I was very sad to see that. Because those guys are, those guys are heroes of mine, so it's really tough.
When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up. Technically, what I thought was, well, I'll take half the money from PayPal, and if I lose half of it, that's okay. But then, of course, the companies encounter difficulties, and then I have a choice of either let the company die or put, all the money into the companies. And so I really didn't want the companies to die, so I put all the money in the companies. Yeah. And then had to borrow money from friends to pay living expenses.
And then I think the final thing I would encourage you to do is, now is the time to take risk. As you get older, your obligations increase. So and once you have a family, you start taking risks not just for yourself, but for your family as well. It gets much harder to do things that might not work out. So now is the time to do that before you have those obligations. So I would encourage you to take risks now. Do something, well, you won't regret it.
And first of all, I'd say starting a business is not for everyone. So generally, starting a business, I'd say, number one is have a high pain threshold. That's it. There's a friend of mine who's got a good saying, which is that starting a company is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Okay, that's generally what happens. Because when you first start a company, there's lots of optimism, and things are great. And then, so happiness at first is high. Then you encounter all sorts of issues. And happiness will steadily decline, and then you'll go through a whole world of hurt. If you succeed, and in most cases you will not succeed, and Tesla almost didn't succeed, came very close to failure. Then if you succeed, then after a long time you will finally get back to happiness. A lot of times, an entrepreneur will come up with something which is only slightly better, and it can't just be slightly better. It's got to be a lot better. When trying different things, you've got to have some acceptance of failure, as you were alluding to earlier. Failure must be an option. If failure is not an option, it's going to result in extremely conservative choices, and you may get something even worse than lack of innovation. Things may go backwards.
You've said that this has been the toughest year for you, the most sort of taxing year for you. Like, why?
Well, I mean, Tesla really faced a severe threat of death due to the Model 3 production ramp. Essentially, the company was bleeding money like crazy, and just if we didn't solve these problems in a very short period of time, we would die. And it was extremely difficult to solve them.
How close to death did you come?
Within single-digit weeks.
22 hours a day, or like what? How many
I
hours?
was working, so 7 days a week, sleeping in the factory. I worked in the paint shop, general assembly, body shop.
Do you ever worry about yourself imploding? Like it's just too much?
Absolutely. No one should put this many hours into work. This is not good. And people should not work this hard. They should not do this. It's very painful.
Painful in what sense?
It hurts my brain and my heart. So this is not recommended for anyone. I just did it because if I didn't do it, then good chance Tesla would die.
if you're trying to figure out what others love, but you don't love it, it's really hard to make that great. So when you work on something, if you fall in love with it, that's a good sign. And then don't worry about if others do. If you do, others will.
Do you see Apple building a car and that maybe being a threat to you?
Well, I would encourage more participation by whoever it is to create electric vehicles. It's quite hard to do, but I think companies like Apple will probably make a compelling electric car. It seems like the obvious thing to do.
Well, there's a ton of failures along the way, that's for sure. Like I said, as I said, for SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed, and we're just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
All you want to do, particularly if you're starting a company, you need to work super hard. So what does super hard mean? Well, when my brother and I were starting our first company, instead of getting an apartment, we just rented a small office and we slept on the couch. And we showered at the YMCA, and we're so hot up we had just one computer. So the website was up during the day, and I was coding at night. 7 days a week, all the time.
There are times when things don't go well, and then that's quite dispiriting for sure. And so then it's difficult to proceed with the same level of enthusiasm. But I do think the things that we're doing are pretty important to the future. And if we don't succeed, then we'll be certainly pointed to as a reason why people shouldn't even try for these things.
Work hard, every waking hour. That's the thing I would say, particularly if you're starting a company. And if you do simple math, say okay, if somebody else is working 50 hours and you're working 100, you'll get twice as much done in the course of a year as the other company.
If you're in a race, don't worry about what the other runners are doing.
Yeah.
Just run.
You can train yourself to pay attention to the tiny details. I think almost anyone can. Although this is very much a double-edged sword, because then you see all the little details, and then little things drive you crazy.